that kind of breaks my heart, really, because I think I never felt like that. I maybe a bit naively entered university and thought, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do this. Nothing is stopping me. And then I kind of realized, oh, this sector actually might have a few barriers that I'm not going to be able to get over necessarily. I can't try and be someone I'm not. I might as well find something that's going to make me happy. That's how I end up here. Yeah.
Exactly. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Diversifying Data. I'm Raki Sharma, and this is the podcast where we aim to amplify the voices of people who come from very diverse backgrounds, and we foster conversations about diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Today, I am joined by Stefania Constantin and also Chloe Tang, both of whom are Kubrick consultants at very different points of the journey. Before we kick off any of the more heavy topics of conversation, I really just want to find out a bit about both of you and hear your individual stories. So,
would you like to go first?
Of course, yeah. I'm Stefania. You're probably the only person in the UK that pronounces this correctly. And I've come here from Romania. I grew up there and just moved over to Bath for university, where I studied for a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. And then I had a few placements within consulting and tech-specific roles, and I developed a passion for data, which is what brought me to Kubrick.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I mean, I guess I got to ask the question, culturally, I mean, experience-wise, how was that moving from Romania? Had you had a lot of experience coming to England beforehand? What made you choose Bath as a place?
So I really wanted to study law at the beginning.
Okay.
And I knew the UK was really good.
Chloe, you've got your own experience. We will touch on that. That wasn't even planned for any listeners at all. But we've got a nice segue there. So law was the original plan.
Yes, but then I realized I didn't necessarily want to just live in one country. And with law, it's quite hard to move once you can only practice within one code of law. So I decided to go into business because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life and just thought business was quite a broad area. So then I could
That's exactly why I did business as well.
Exactly.
That's very honest.
Yeah.
I think it's when you're at that crossroads of, oh, okay, I could do this.
Yeah.
Let's do business because it's everything.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I thought I was going to navigate whatever I wanted to do, and then ended up doing nothing related to business, which is great in the end.
Yeah.
But the cultural differences, I didn't think I was going to have such a big cultural shock because I traveled quite a bit with my family when I was younger. I lived in Canada for a few months, so I didn't think it was going to be such a massive difference. But I think moving by myself and then there were so many different things.
Yeah.
The whole tea culture that I still don't get.
I'm from here. I don't get the tea culture either.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
you
I'm
might
with
be
you on
the
that.
only person I've met. I still tell people that I struggled with sarcasm for my whole entire first year, because British sarcasm is quite different. It's
like breathing for us, I think.
Pretty much.
It's quite similar to. I think I'm probably the most sarcastic person ever, and it's very ingrained in British culture. Is that not sort of culturally?
I think English is quite for me at least, a monotone language. It doesn't really have a lot of inflections. When you want to say something, you don't necessarily raise your voice or lower it, depending on the context. And then sarcasm kind of uses the same monotone. It's just knowing the person to know if what they're saying is sarcasm or not. And when you're just first meeting someone, you kind of try to be... to believe whatever they're saying. And that didn't really go well for me.
Yeah, I get that completely. And so I guess that's led on nicely to data. It's quite a niche industry for someone who's gone into something quite big and broad, such as business, and then to narrow that down into data and technology. Where did that come from, if I have to ask?
That is a great question. I think because we're talking about challenges and struggles and everything, I think when I got to university, and I met so many different people that were kind of, they knew what I wanted to do with their careers, and they got to experiment with so many different things, and they already had internships by the time they got to first year. And I was just learning about all of these new industries and different careers that you can take. And I think I learned about consulting in my first semester, and I had no idea what consulting was before. And then from there, I really wanted to try it out because it sounded like something that would really interest me as a career. And then I applied for Deloitte, which was a technology consulting specific role. I had no idea what technology, I mean, I knew what technology was. I didn't really know how to work with it. And then I got it. And then once I started working there, I met so many different people from so many different backgrounds who had kind of a similar story into how they got into tech and data. And it was probably the first time I actually got passionate about a career, like fully passionate.
That's so nice. That's really nice.
So that's how I got into data.
Amazing. Well, I'll switch it over. I'm sure, again, a very, very different story. I know for a fact you do not come from Romania. So it's going to be... No, it's going to be really interesting to kind of hear your story as well in terms of, I guess, the exact same trajectory leading on to the point, because now you're on client site. So you're officially ingrained in the world of consulting, data, technology. How did you get to that point?
So I did my undergraduate degree in Bristol, very close to Bath. Bath is beautiful. I can see why you picked Bath.
Stunning. It looks like Little Italy, really.
But yes, I did my undergraduate degree in law at the University of Bristol. That was 3 up and down years for sure. Loved it. Loved my experience at university. Loved like moving out. Loved the city. Like would go back to Bristol any day. It's just so beautiful there. So much to do. But I think the degree I chose probably wasn't the right one for me. And I can look back now and say that quite confidently. Like there probably was something more suited to me, more technical, more black and white. I think I wanted something more black and white. My brain doesn't work with all these grey areas, which is entirely what the law is.
Yes.
So it took me a long time to adjust to that. And it was a really big struggle. Like, I think nobody wants to admit that they struggled on their degree, especially not law, where everyone's like, oh no, I'm the best. And like, you've got to have this kind of persona about you. You kind of fake it till you make it.
Right.
Especially in law. But I didn't fit in. And, obviously I love the people I met there, love the friends that I made, but the whole culture and the industry, I decided at that point of my life it wasn't for me.
Can I ask if sorry to veer off course, coming up to the point of doing law, how did you make that initial decision to go there? How did you decide at the beginning, or how was that decision potentially made for you that you would be best suited to law going in?
I think my older sister had already picked what career she wanted from quite a young age, and I was so desperate for some direction and something to help me shape my choices. And I thought, oh, law's a good sector to go into. Obviously, there's some good money to be made. It's obviously a well-respected career. My family would be proud of me. And I wanted that for myself, and I like fixated on it from like GCSE kind of age, secondary school age. And I was like, this is going to shape everything I do. I did a college program, like a widening participation program in college to work towards getting into law. I did work experience. I built this from really young. Obviously was devastated when I decided that it wasn't quite the right path for me at this point. But a lot of that, I wanted some direction. It was such a clear direction to go in because there was so much you had to do from an early age.
It's a vocational career, right? Sure. I think, I've talked about this so many times in the podcast. I've probably repeated myself like crazy. Everyone's like, we get it. But, when you go into a vocational career, there are steps to get you from A to B. Now, with the world opening up so much and with there being so many different areas to go into and actually form a really great career with, there aren't necessarily steps to get you from A to B. Or if there are steps, it's not widely known to people what those steps are. So I think for people whose brain work in a very regimented linear way, it can be really challenging and daunting to go into areas, even if you're excited about the opportunities that present themselves. So, you went into law. How did you veer off course then?
Well, there was so much safety in knowing that, I get my law degree, go do LPC, go qualify to be a lawyer. That was like, those steps were laid out. And like, I finished uni, and like even throughout uni, I realized that I probably wasn't going to get a training contract. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I applied a little bit, but my heart wasn't in it. So I graduated and I had no clear path. I had to go home and kind of rethink everything and reevaluate where I was. I found out in my final year that I had ADHD, and I had to settle with that news and try and figure out who I was, how I wanted my career to be, and how this kind of new discovery was going to fit into that.
Right.
So then I started, looking into loads of different careers, applied for many, many jobs. Kubrick was, one of the lucky ones, but I applied and put many applications out there.
Yeah.
It was in the pandemic as well. So it was really quite a grueling time, rejection after rejection. Also not knowing what I wanted either. So probably my applications were misguided.
Yeah, and I think honestly that must be similar for not just both of you, but for so many people out there.
Yeah.
It's difficult enough having gone through this pandemic, but applying for jobs when you're not in a particularly vocational field and your brain's trying to wrap around what could I do, there's not that many resources available to you, so you just end up putting application out after application. I just wanted to ask if you had a similar sort of experience being in this country. Again, you're looking for a different type of career after graduating. Did you have a similar experience of putting applications out and feeling that nervousness, I guess?
Yeah, really similar, especially because I knew I wanted to go back into consulting or data. And then I had very high, let's say, requirements for whatever consulting company I wanted to go into. But I didn't really know how to sell myself at that point, because I think I kind of started to doubt myself. There was a bit of an imposter syndrome going on. So that was a roller coaster.
I'm so glad you said that. It's so real. And
Yeah.
people don't talk about that enough.
Yeah, they don't.
Horrible feeling of feeling you're not good enough. And it just takes someone to be like, you've got a degree, you've done all of this, like, look at yourself, you're a great candidate.
Yeah.
If someone, you got rejected, that's not necessarily you, and it's just not for you, that one.
And
definitely.
There's resources, for example, interview prep and all of this. I remember going through all of that, and I was in the middle of the pandemic. I just graduated from my master's degree, came back and was like, panic. I moved country again. I don't know what I'm going to do. So it's at any stage of your career. But I think the reason why I love having junior professionals on here to talk about it is because with a bit of experience in your career, you kind of get used to a bit of the knocks and you can kind of pick yourself up a little bit. But when you're right at the start, it is so daunting because you look at your peers around you potentially who have got themselves into jobs. They're involved in, setting out their career straight, and they've got promotions and they're moving and they're doing things, and you're stuck there only seeing what's happening directly in your periphery because you're not comparing yourself to anyone that's above you or still in university. Were there certain types of people that you looked up to in terms of, this is the type of career that I want to have?
To me, before, I think, joining Deloitte, every single person I've ever looked up to in terms of career and how they shape their life and everything were all the men that I've met in my life, my father and my uncle and so on. And then I got to Deloitte, and my manager there was the most amazing woman I've ever met in my whole life. And then she became my mentor. And I don't think I realized how impactful it is to kind of see yourself represented in any kind of way before I actually got to experience that.
Yeah.
Because I knew as a concept it was very important, but I didn't fully understand how important it was before it actually happened.
Right.
And then her and her career and her way of working and mentoring without ever being asked to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm trying to emulate as much as I can, and we've kept in touch, and I know that I can always ask her for any career advice if I ever need it.
That's brilliant. It seems, like you said, it seems to have made a really big impact in the way that you carry yourself and the way, I'm guessing you're confident about, your abilities because you have someone there who you can ask questions to and reinforces that what you're doing is good. So I guess it is important to have that representation. Chloe, have you felt like you've seen anyone similar to you that you can reach out to, or not quite the same experience?
I think because this role at Kubrick was kind of the first of its kind that I applied to. I had very little idea about data and tech. I hadn't, I did enough research to get into this role, but not enough about the sector and about, people who were like me. So I hadn't really found any role models yet. Obviously, I came here and I spoke to people like you and Charlotte, and like instantly found people that, were, that I got on with, that were in this industry and who, were so, friendly and like, that I could talk to about like my progression, who wanted me to succeed. And then I met my cohort and, found other people like me that are in the same position as me. Would I say that I found someone like me exactly? I don't think so. I haven't spoke to many people who, are neurodivergent, come from British Asian kind of background. I've, I'm looking for that still, but I am relatively new to the sector, so I know that I still have a bit of looking to do.
Yeah.
I think I'm so used to seeing like mentors in the legal sector, and they're all predominantly male. I've got quite a few mentors from the legal sector, predominantly male ones.
Yes.
I've spoken to lots of partners, so trainees, barristers,
Yeah.
wonderful people, really, really inspiring people, but I've yet to find someone who's like me in either sector.
Your experiences are your own, and it is really important to amplify your own stories and your own personal journeys, because someone who's listening in could really identify with what you're saying. So maybe there is a chance for me to succeed in this particular field.
I will say people have reached out to me on LinkedIn after seeing that I work at Kubrick and to ask me about Kubrick. And I've always given them the time of day. I've had random phone calls on LinkedIn with people that I've just connected to be like, can you tell me more about Kubrick and like the role and the development and stuff? And, I find it really great that someone felt like they could reach out to me.
Yeah.
They saw that, I was interacting with, Kubrick's page and stuff, and obviously liking, the podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that they felt that they could.
Yeah.
So I'd like to pay it forward, even if I haven't necessarily found that.
That's an amazing way to look at it. So I guess flipping back again to the diversity and inclusion piece, I'd like to know from each of you why it is so important to you. You're both, again, at the junior end of your career. What is it about diversity and inclusion that is important to you, or what aspects are important to you?
So I don't think I realised how important diversity and inclusion was until I got to university. And I, again, saw that there were so many people here all fighting for the same job. But, at college, I got into this widening participation program that I didn't know was a thing. I just thought, oh, it's a good opportunity, I'll apply for it. I didn't really think about the kind of doors it would open. I entered university with already a wealth of legal experience, which is practically unheard of. Nobody kind of, it's not something that's easy to get. And I already came in, I was like, oh, I'm already not on the back foot. I've already got all this, so I'm ready to enter the industry. And everyone's like, how did you manage to get these opportunities? Everyone's kind of fighting for the same thing. And I was like, oh, this is a really good program. And I met mentors on that program, and then cheesy as it is, was inspired to do the same, paid it forward, went and mentored on the same programs for students but in Bristol. I ended up doing the next program above to get more experience, and I was like, I could see the power that diversity and inclusion had and why participation had.
Yes.
And like how much it could really help people, and how people didn't know that it was accessible to them.
Yeah.
And but it also brought a lot to light that a lot of people still don't think that opportunities are available to them, and a lot of people are still held back. And a lot of my work in advocating for overcoming barriers to entry and educational barriers and access to opportunity, I do all of that because I didn't realize that people still felt like they couldn't go to university. They felt like they couldn't get certain careers and couldn't enter certain things. That kind of breaks my heart, really, because I think, I never felt like that. I, kind of maybe a bit naively entered university and thought, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do this. Nothing is stopping me. And then I kind of realized, oh, this sector actually, might have a few barriers that that I'm not going to be able to get over necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you've seen it firsthand, and your work, the work that you do on it and paying it forward, I think is a big part of who you are and what we've spoken about. So I think that's always really helpful. It doesn't have to come from the top end of, the CEO of a company saying, oh, I'm going to, put this diversity and inclusion program forward so that we have to have X amount of this people, X amount of that people. It can come from people around you. So in terms of diversity and inclusion for you, how has that played into things, or what does it mean to you?
I think the biggest factor for me was kind of like you said, unless someone knows that something is available to them, they will never actually pursue it. And then once they know that it could be available to them, it's a matter of, do I feel worthy? But I was really kind of blessed to have such a diverse cohort in my university degree. I think it was something like 50% of the people were from outside of the UK, from all over the world, and then 50% were from the UK. And I felt incredible just talking to people from all over the world and getting to know their stories and learning about how they think. And whenever we worked on projects together, there's such a different perspective that's brought just because this very niche information, and you think in such a particular way, and those things I think are extremely important for any kind of workplace wherever you go into. So I think, yes, it's partially we can cultivate diversity and inclusion by helping people, and by, like you said, if someone reaches out to you, definitely offer offer your help
Yeah.
as much as you can. But it's also, I feel like companies can and do a lot to help on diversity and inclusion. And like you said, it's not, we're going to hire 40% of people from, it's not as easy as just splitting them into brackets, but it's advocating that you're encouraging people to focus on their mental health, which was a big thing of why I applied to Kubrick, because it meant that they could understand I could feel included.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also seeing that you collaborate with women in data, which was a very big part of why I applied.
Yeah.
Because it meant that you do commit to bring in more people, more women into the technology field. It's seeing that there's kind of, if not a system, there's an intention there to be aware that people might have different ways of entering the industry, and they're still given a chance, which I think ultimately is really important.
That's brilliant. Actually, I think that word intention is really key there, because there's 2 points to it. There's the intention to do something really powerful and to create change, and then actually making the action points and creating that change. So there's the 2 facets to it. I do think that intention is just as important, not intention for intention's sake, but if you really feel passionately, like Chloe, you do, about, including people who feel marginalized in any way. I mean, you having struggled with ADHD through university, do you mind speaking a little bit about that and how that's affected your outlook on diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I realized that there's not as much out there regarding supporting people with neurodivergence. I think I've done a lot of my own research, come to a lot of my own kind of conclusions, and unfortunately I do think a lot of it is at the moment is you've got to support yourself, and you've got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily accommodations. Like, you can go out and find them yourselves, and you can approach your managers and speak to them and make this information known. But I know some people still don't want to disclose that kind of information with fear of being judged. I know Kubrick's very open about whether you want to disclose it or not. I've personally found a quite large benefit from disclosing it and speaking to my managers about it, and being comfortable in that space and in that knowledge. I still think there's a lot to be done with that. I'm not sure how. I think maybe that's why everyone's stuck. Because obviously everyone's neurodivergence is actually a little bit different there. And then I don't know how we would accommodate everyone, but I'd like to see a lot more being done, or a lot more people openly talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because I think I'd love to know as well how if you feel comfortable sharing, how have you phrased that conversation to peers, to workplace, to anyone? Has there been a time where you've, obviously there's been a time where you haven't been as vocal, and then you've come to a point where you do feel comfortable enough vocalizing it? How did that change, and also what did you say?
Right, so going right back when I was doing all these applications and get rejected time after time, I figured there was no point in putting that aside. I might as well just be straight up with it. And I thought it was really great when I had my interview for Kubrick and I spoke to everyone about it, and everyone was really understanding about that, and that it really felt that this company saw some value in me. And even though I was being open about it, I was very open about the weaknesses that I have from that, but I was also very open about the strengths it gave me, and that they're willing to listen. I think that was what was important. I then met my cohort, and I remember I didn't announce it in the big cohort meetings at first. I think I might have told the trainers a few separately, as just a personal message, and then I told my Scrum team, and my Scrum team were really great about it, and we worked really collaboratively together, and they were much more understanding about why I was struggling with some of the technical side of things, with some of the teachings. It was a very new environment for me. I felt like I was so scarred after university and learning in that kind of environment that didn't suit me, that I was really worried coming into this that I wasn't going to be able to do it, and I had so much fear, and luckily my team were super great about it. I then was really nervous to go on client site, and I had such a comfortable time of training and everyone was really supportive. I was worried to go in a professional placement, how they would feel about it. I took a big step. I was in my client placement interview, and I told my now manager at the time, I remember we were doing client placement prep interviews. And, you know, we were planning like, oh, you know, tell us your strengths and weaknesses and sort of stuff. And I planned my answer to like, what's your biggest weakness question. I spoke about how, oh, sometimes because of my ADHD, I get fixated on small details and it can make me, you know, I get a bit stuck. You know, I struggle sometimes bouncing back. But on the flip side, it's made me a really good team player because with a good supportive team, you know, they help bring me out of that. And I know that harboring a team environment is, you know, particularly beneficial to me. And, you know, he spoke about how enthusiastic I was and how much, you know, I'm willing to learn. I know I'm not the fastest learner. I'll put it straight out there. I'm not the fastest learner as much as I want to be. But I really shone and I really, you know, expressed how much I was willing to try and give it a go. And that's what sold it to him. And he told me later on that that's why he picked me, you know, to go on this client placement, which I felt so safe in that. And then I recently had a catch up with him one-to-one in the office. And he was asked, this was the first time we sat down properly because finally moved to London, seeing everyone. And he was just asking me about how I was finding things. I just moved to his team again. And so it's kind of like reintroducing ourselves. And he actually asked me, he was like, oh, what can we do? You know, is there any accommodations I can make for your ADHD? You mentioned it. Let me know if there's anything, please tell me. Like, I want to make sure that, you know, you're okay and you're feeling supported. And I know I was kind of taken aback because I wasn't expecting anybody to be so open about it. And he was just like, yeah, just tell me what you need.
Wow.
And at that point, I didn't even know what I needed. I was just like, can we record some meetings?
But it's
it was
all
so
about,
fresh.
It's about feeling supported, I think, in that. And I'm sure that's going to help out a lot of people who are listening and maybe don't know the best way to vocalize it. And I think the way that you have turned what could be presumed as a negative into a positive is part of what I think makes diversity so beautiful. Is we all have strengths and weaknesses. Doesn't matter if you're from a group that's a minority, but you can always turn that into a strength. And I know we were talking about the different ways of turning your weaknesses into positives. As someone, again, at the junior end of her career, moved not only country, but then moved industry very quickly. What have been your kind of biggest struggles or challenges to overcome?
Before that, could I just ask Chloe a question?
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to ask if it's okay for you. Why did you feel like talking about your ADHD with your coworkers or your managers would be not necessarily taken as a fact, or they wouldn't be necessarily understanding? Do you feel like there was something there that made you think that, or
why I felt like it might be negative? I think there's a massive stigma around neurodivergence still, and like especially with ADHD. There's a lot of research that I've done that has opened my eyes to things, and obviously not everyone's done this research, and it's about, you know, me being as transparent as possible. At the end of the day, if I'm, you know, struggling to do something, I might as well be honest about why I'm struggling to do it. And I think I've gotten to this stage now in my career after going through university and not speaking up about why I was struggling, to the point where I'm like, there's no point in me not being my best self, not producing my best work when accommodations can be made. And, you know, get over that, oh, they might think I'm like a bit hyper, or like, you know, the horrible stigmas of ADHD, and they might think that I'm not focusing, or, you know, they might think all of that, but that's outweighed by the fact that they might not. And this could be really beneficial for me to talk about it. So yeah, I think that.
It's amazing that you did that, though.
Thank you.
No, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. So no, I think that's been really, really helpful for me as well, because I'll be the first one to admit it. I understand it to a degree. I don't struggle with it myself, so I will never truly understand what it is to work in that manner. But I do understand that there is a lot of work to be done internally for managers to be able to work with different people with ease, because I think that we are in a group mentality. That's what work is. We work in teams. It's a group, but each member of the group is different. It's not a one collective group. So I think when you feel comfortable enough to vocalize that, hopefully that's going to start some really positive conversations about how can we facilitate that, rather than oh God, panic, someone's working in a different way. This is going to throw off our whole team structure. So no, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. I'm not sure if some of it's like partially defensive as like if I tell them, maybe they'll like not expect less of me, but be more understanding when I'm struggling, or if I, need some extra support here and there. Like, I think maybe part of me is like, it's a bit of a defense thing where I have to say it to be like, oh, I've said it now, got it out there. But I know it's not that easy for everyone. I think I feel more of a benefit to having been open about it, because I think I've been so closed about it for so long and it's done absolutely nothing for me. So I've come to this stage now where this is me, you gotta accept it.
No, that's where we all need to get to be honest. So I'm taking a lot of inspiration from this myself.
But you don't have to downplay it. I feel like you need so much courage to fully accept yourself in the first place, and then to put yourself out there and be fully confident in.
I'm still a work in progress. Like, still, I mean, it was a long time in the making. Like, that period of finishing uni, not knowing what I wanted, not knowing where I was, who I was. I'm still not 100% sure now, but there was so much building in that tough time.
Yeah.
I think it's gotten to the point now where,
it's very brave that you've been able to just say, it's what it is. This is how I work. I'm diverse in this way, and it's a really, really positive thing. So yes,
people in general are scared to say that they're struggling.
Yes, exactly.
Just like, I'm just finding it difficult. Like, I think that's maybe mine's a bit of like, I know maybe I'm downplaying, maybe it's a bit of an excuse, like to say, to be able to say like that I am struggling, and it kind of gives me maybe not an excuse is the wrong way to put it. It gives me a way to be open about about struggling. I think it's hard for maybe your neurotypical peer to be like, I'm struggling. I don't really have a reason exactly why I'm struggling, but I am struggling. And to say that is quite difficult. So I do commend people out there who are saying that they're struggling, anyone, whether neurodivergent or not, because like you said, it takes a lot of courage to go do that.
Absolutely. And Stefania, I was going to ask you as well from our previous conversations. I know we've actually been talking a lot about this, but I think challenges, overcoming them, turning weaknesses into positives, letting your diverse background or your different experiences that you've had, like you've said, you've met so many different people, traveling, university, living in Canada, working within different careers, doing a different degree. What challenges specifically do you feel like you faced within working in data, for example, and how have you chosen to overcome them?
Yeah. The education system in Romania is quite different. You don't get to choose what you do a subject for your high school. You choose a specific profile, and then the subjects are kind of dictated to you.
So interesting.
Fun fact.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So how does that work? I'm really curious.
So when you're like 14 or 15, you have to choose what type of high school you want to go into. And it can be theoretical or practical and so on. And if it's theoretical, then you have two big paths, which is the humanities or the sciences. And when you're 14, then you're making that decision, and then you can't really turn back. It's a bit daunting to be kind of left with that decision, because I love maths.
Really intense. I mean, I just can't imagine at 14. We're just worried about our GCSEs, but then we've got the A-levels to come after that. Like, that's really, really high pressure. Do you get a lot of steer in Romania from sort of careers guidance counselors, or
we don't have guidance counselors?
No. And then how do you make those decisions at 14 then?
I guess you just decide whether you're like literature or sciences more. And I really love the sciences, I think, but I think kind of how math is taught in Romania, like I did trigonometry when I was in 7th grade, so 13. So it's a bit more intense at the beginning, and then you just kind of want to get away from it when you're 14. So I chose the humanities side, and I stopped being taught maths, basically. And then I got into university, and there was a lot of statistics, and I had to sit down so many nights kind of trying to teach myself maths again.
Wow.
To be able to do anything at university. And then obviously data is not necessarily maths focused, but having a logical mindset. So having studied anything that's science, at least related or adjacent, really helps. And I think I thought there was going to be a barrier because of that. But it turns out thinking differently in any kind of way. So for me, because I studied languages and everything, connecting dots a lot differently helped a lot. And I think also seeing the different nuances. So because I did a lot of debating and everything else, it's, yes, I can see this side, but then there's also a flip side to that. And maybe there's a middle ground, and bringing that into how I chose to look at data and interpreting data really helped. But I feel like it was just taking that step between this is a struggle versus I can turn this into a strength. And that step was, it took some time.
That's it, because I think it's brilliant to see that that's your thought process, because you really have. You can see the thought process turning of how you've actually turned a perceived negative or a struggle of not doing maths and not having any maths background, and you could have felt really out of your depth, but you took the time and initiative to train yourself up in it, get really comfortable in that, you know, uncomfortable space of not knowing, and then progressing forward. So, you know, any advice for anyone out there who maybe is a bit daunted about, okay, I haven't done this in a while, and, you know, I'm going to have to be quite adept at doing this. You know, any learning tips for someone who hasn't? Yeah.
I told you, I feel like you're really brave for saying that you're struggling with something and even asking for help, because I never did that. I never used to do that. So especially in first year of university, when I was just looking around and everyone was just okay with everything, if not excelling in things, I felt really out of place to ask for help. So I tried to do everything by myself, which is great. It's great to work independently and really see how far you can push yourself. But at the same time, it's also great to ask for help. And I feel like that would be the biggest advice I can give people. If you're struggling with something and you really don't know how to even start to do that, just reach out to anyone. I'm sure people are more than happy to help. It's just building that courage within yourself to know that if you fail at something, it doesn't mean that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And failure is not just, it's not everything.
No,
it's just
it is
another
it's just,
step.
Yes, exactly. It's another learning opportunity. But Chloe, I know you and I have talked about your background in the legal sector as well. Have you noticed a difference between your previous sector and now the data sector in terms of feeling comfortable enough to voice?
That is a great question, because I was just thinking of it when you were speaking, that I feel like in the legal sector and, you know, in the kind of legal roles that I've been exposed to, there's this big stigma of, oh, if you don't understand, there's no one here to give you the answers. You've got to go figure it out yourself. And there's probably a bit of shame in not knowing and not, you know, having all this information, not having found out yourself, and to ask for help and to come into data and tech and like you work in teams in legal, but working in teams in data, and from my experience, it is a massive team game, and it's like, you know, you're only as good as your weakest player, really. And everybody harbors that kind of team effort, and everyone's super supportive about it because you're all working towards the same goal. There is much less of that kind of shame and like enshrined kind of competition, because everybody is working towards the same thing, and you know, you're all working to succeed. Now, I feel much better reaching out to people in my team being like, oh, I don't know this. These are experts in their field. These are people who've been, you know, working on my client placement for much longer than I have. I have absolutely no shame being like, I don't understand. You definitely know more. Please show me. And I think it's super important to have this kind of attitude of, you know, I want to learn. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not ashamed to not know. I think there's a lot of shame in lots of industries and lots of careers where if you don't know, then you're failing. And like you said, just because you're failing, you fail doesn't mean you're a failure. Yeah. And I think resilience is something that is a very underplayed like quality to have. To be resilient, I think is massive in this industry, in any kind of industry, in kind of careers nowadays. You know, people bouncing about. You've got to be resilient, and that's the only way you're going to get ahead.
Brilliant. Well, I think we're going to start wrapping up now, and I wanted to just really understand from both of you. Firstly, what do you see for your futures individually, and how would you like teams or organizations to be structured to foster naturally diverse teams? Because I think that's what we're all working towards, but we shouldn't really have to be having these conversations and making it a big hoopla. It should just be fostering naturally inclusive, diverse teams. How do we get there? And, you know, what do you see for what do you see for your futures in that?
First off, being on this podcast was a goal of mine for this year anyway. So definitely getting into doing more work in diversity inclusion. I think after having my break after uni, after doing so much at uni, to having that gap where I couldn't and, you know, do these kind of opportunities and, you know, work with people that had similar mindsets to me. Then it's really good to get back into doing this kind of work, and Kubrick are great for that, and there's so much to do with that. I think in the future, I'd like to explore going back to my legal roots and maybe working in legal tech. I think there's a lot of, you know, exciting stuff being done in the legal tech space. So I'd love to take the skills that I've learned here and my background in law and kind of, you know, re-engineer it back into a role where I'd be happy in the legal sector doing and being me, not quite in like a solicitors or like a, you know, a junior trainee kind of perspective. I think during my 2-year break after uni, I looked into going into recruitment because I remember, you know, looking at roles in the legal sector and thinking, these legal teams don't really represent me. These recruitment teams don't really represent me. And what's the first step in doing that is to bring someone like me onto recruitment teams, and to see if I saw a recruiter that was like me, maybe I'd feel like I'd want to go that firm, I'd want to apply. And, you know, that was kind of one of my first steps. And I remember thinking that ages ago, being like, that might be a good career for me. I'd love to try and enter the legal space again and essentially prove that if I can do it, then someone else like me can do it. And find a role that fits me in that sector, and not necessarily the role I originally thought, but there's always a space for someone like me, and I want to show that.
I love that. I think that's a really brilliant goal for you to have. And, you know, whether it happens now, 5 years, 10 years, but just having that, I'm going to go back and prove a point and really help foster change. I think it's brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Stefania, anything for the future for you that you can see?
I don't think I have a definite answer to it.
That's absolutely fine, because, you know, things change all the time. So even in the immediate future.
I was going to ask Kubrick if we can implement something like going around and to colleges and sixth forms and everything else, and talking to kids about.
I also have this thought,
careers
because people
in
don't
data.
know about this opportunity.
There's so many different careers that you can have in data, and it's not necessarily just working within data.
Please invite us to get involved.
Nice. We will. I'm going to pitch this straight after this.
Fantastic. So doing any kind of activities that could
get you involved in that.
And
perfect.
Getting more people to know that there's a door that they could open in the first place, because I think I've worked a lot to get where I am, but there's a great degree of chance and luck involved in that, and I don't think a lot of people realize how lucky they are to be where they are in the first place. Because I'm not downplaying how much I've worked for anything, but I'm very conscious that there's a lot of luck involved in that. So once I am in a position where I can help other people, I think recognizing that you can take a chance on people and you can offer them that luck, that's what I see for myself in the future, getting to a place where I can help others in that sense.
Amazing. That's a really great goal to have as well. Both of you, I think you're going to go on and do fantastic things. Where can people connect with you? I'm assuming LinkedIn for both of you.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Well, we'll insert your LinkedIn profile here. And thank you to everyone who's watched the podcast today. I really hope that you found it insightful, and that both Chloe's and Stefania's journeys resonated with you in some way. We are really very much looking forward to hearing any questions and follow-ups from people, and looking forward to the next episode. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.